You are. Want to welcome you all to the Tallan Azure Virtual Cloud Security event. This is being recorded, so if you're uncomfortable being recorded, you can actually drop off the call if you don't want to be recorded. My name is Mark, last name is Jacquard. I am a security architect with Tallan. And I have approximately 30 years in IT, probably the last almost 20 in security. So I want to welcome all of you. And I'm going to introduce first of all, my boss, Stan Kennedy.
Hey everyone, I'm Stan Kennedy, VP of Cloud Services and Security at Tallan. Super excited to share today's event with you guys, and we hope that you get a lot out of this. We're going to cover a lot, and so make sure you stick around to the end because we'll give you sort of a starting point of kind of where to go next. So turn it back over to you, Mark.
Okay, and my partner in crime, Tom.
Hey, this is Tom Chesluski. I work with Mark. I work for Stan also. I'm a lead consultant focusing on Azure for Tallan. So welcome everybody. Hope you enjoy the show.
Okay, so first of all, most people, at least in the Microsoft world, are familiar with Security Center, Azure Defender and all that, but recently Microsoft changed the name. Now everything's just Microsoft Defender for Cloud. So that's why we're talking about the cloud overview. So when we look at Microsoft Defender for Cloud, it really addresses three challenges of security: visibility into security and compliance, the time to respond to all of that. But the big thing we look at is we have this increase in all these different attacks. I mean, the threat vectors for the world have changed. We are looking at them attacking our cloud environments, our workloads. They're getting more sophisticated over time. We want that visibility. Those are challenges that we all have. It doesn't matter if you're in the cloud or if you're in on-prem. We all have pretty much the same challenges. We need to protect that infrastructure. We need to protect that architecture no matter where it is. So we look at all of these things over time. We look at what's happening. We look at the controls that we have in place. 65% on average of all breaches are going to take months or longer to discover. It's all about hiding yourself in the environment. In 2019, it saw a 95% increase in the cost of those breaches on average. Looking on a typical enterprise, about $5.16 million, the cost of a breach. 128 cloud activities inspected, monitored, and controlled. It was Security Center, now Microsoft Defender for Cloud. So these are challenges that we in the security space, we as security professionals, we all face. So we're going to talk about zero trust. Oh, wait a minute, Mark, you said this was about cloud security, and it is. But we have to understand the frameworks that we operate under. You know, traditional defense in depth is what we as security professionals have pushed for years, right? But there has been a methodology change. So why are we having a zero trust? Because that's the new methodology. It's complex. We have all of these devices, users, connections, and they're coming from everywhere. We have a cloud. We're not a traditional on-prem only where, hey, you know, you're behind the firewall and hey, that's cool. It doesn't matter what's on the internal side. Yeah, we got some insider threat. Who cares? We'll take care of them. We'll go slap them upside the back of the head. Trusted network is what it used to be called, where initial attacks were usually network-based. They were pretty simple. We had DDoS, we had all of that, but we accepted a lower security on the inside the network. Hey, we got that perimeter firewall, IDS, IPS, yeah, we're good. We've got endpoint, yeah, that's okay, but that doesn't work. Over time, we're seeing devices increasingly leaving the network. We used to have sales guys, marketing people, they'd leave the network, and we allowed a few security and admin people to access outside the network with a VPN connection. Well, guess what? Now we have bring your own device. We have Wi-Fi, we have mobile, we have software as a service. And so attackers now have shifted their methodology. They're really looking for credentials. That's why there's been such an increase in phishing. It's all about the identity now. And we as security people, I won't lie, we're pretty overwhelmed. We've got a lot of information. We've got a lot of threat vectors. We've got a lot of ingress and egress points that we have to protect. And how do we do that? So we start looking at the zero trust model. First and foremost, the biggest thing, key takeaway about zero trust is we usually start with identity. Does that mean you have to start with identity? No. You might say, hey, I'm good on identity and I need to focus on my devices. That's great. But identity is about explicitly validating that trust on every access request. It's about dynamically addressing insufficient trust, things like multi-factor authentication, things around security policy enforcement where I say, hey, you know what? I don't recognize the location you're logging in from, so I'm going to force you to change your password because I don't believe it's you. That's a risk. So we're looking at all of those things. We're also looking at modernizing our SecOps. It's a strategy. We're looking at what's the business need? What are the assets we're using? Deep dive visibility inside and outside the network, because it's about protecting our assets no matter where they are. It's going to increase our security, increase our productivity. What about operational technology, data centers? You know, we need to start looking at that control. Some of the technology that we have in data centers, 50 years old. We want to modernize that. We want to protect that. We want to make sure that we have the best security methodology and enforcement of that strategy across the entire network. We're looking at that whole zero trust model. It's dynamic. We're looking at all sorts of different things, not just the identity. Identity is a great starting point for zero trust, but we want to explicitly verify all that access. So zero trust is actually based on 3 universal principles. Verify explicitly, always authenticate based on all the available data that we have. So think about multi-factor authentication. Yeah, I've got a user, I've got a password, but you know what? I'm going to send a text to the phone and make sure you respond. least privileged access. So, do you need to be global admin all the time? No. Checks and balances. So if I need to go change something in my cloud environment, I request that access for a specific amount of time, just in time and just enough to do what I need to do. And we always assume that there's a breach because we want to minimize that blast radius for those breaches. We want to prevent lateral movement across our users, network, devices, and applications. It's all about that trust model. Again, we're not perimeter centric if we're in the cloud. We have this whole cloud infrastructure. We might have a hybrid. My apologies for the coughing. So we're looking at every possible scenario here. Now we have 3 guiding principles, but we also have pillars of trust. Where are those pillars? What are those things that we have to protect? So I had my 3 guiding principles, but I'm looking at applying those principles to identities, devices, data, applications, infrastructure, and the network. But we're also using organizational policy. We're using security policy enforcement. And this is really a cool map in the fact of how Microsoft products can actually map across different aspects of those pillars. I've got, for identity, I have Azure AD. I could sync that to the on-prem AD. I have identity protection, Defender for identity. I'm looking at Microsoft Defender for cloud for policy enforcement. I get that single pane of glass, and we're going to look at some of those dashboards. These are all things that we look at and we start drilling into and we start enforcing policy. Do I have to do zero trust all at once? No. And I wouldn't recommend it. Zero trust, like any phased approach to securing a network. Okay, what's my most vulnerable? Well, that's my identity. That's where people are targeting me. So I might start with identity. I might move on then to my devices and say, you know what? I really need to look at those endpoints. Whether it's in the cloud, whether it's on-prem, I need to start securing all of that. We look at threat intelligence. Again, something like Microsoft Sentinel, so that we have a SIEM, data analytics, so that I can start creating use cases that say, okay, what am I looking for? What would an attacker do? Let's look at for those metrics and try to find out if anybody's done that stuff. So zero trust is a big part of securing a cloud environment. It's also about maturity. Everybody has to start somewhere. So in this maturity model, I start with identity access management. I then look at my workloads and add that on top. Then I'm going to add my devices and network, then my data. And finally, I have this mature environment. So how long is it going to take me to get here? That's a great question. So, do you have 20 other jobs? Are you focusing only on security and securing the environment? Or do you have 20 other jobs? That's going to dictate this timeline. Budgets dictate this timeline. But again, it's all about maturing gradually. Secure identity, then move on, whether it be to devices, workloads, network. But we want to get to that where we have a mature model. Are you done? No. It's an ever evolving, just like IT. We're never completely done, but we're mature enough that we can make changes quickly. And that's really what that zero trust framework is about. We've done all our best effort to mature and secure our environment. So looking at Microsoft SCI, Security, Compliance, and Identity, Azure is the only cloud platform built by a security vendor. Microsoft earns over $10 billion in security revenue. There are over 400,000 customers. 90 of the top Fortune 100 trust Microsoft solutions. Microsoft employs 3,700 security experts. I actually know a couple people who work there, and spends more than $1 billion annually on security. In 2020, there were 6 billion malware threats detected, blocked by Microsoft Defender. Microsoft takes in over 8 trillion signals every 24 hours. All the bad things that are happening out there on the internet. This is information that we can use to secure our environment. So if I look at a typical cloud kill chain model, there are multiple vectors, exposures, that those bad actors are going to look for. They're going to look for insecurely configured applications, devices. They're going to look for vulnerabilities. They're going to look for infected admin accounts, and they are going to try and exploit all of that. Anything that they can see that is exposed, they are looking for an opportunity to access something in order to get into the infrastructure. So what are they looking to access? Virtual machines, web apps. They're looking to steal credentials, brute force, the Internet of Things devices. Brown, green, doesn't matter. Once they have access, and that's key, they're then going to try to laterally move. They're going to look at other things, web apps, SQL databases, virtual machines, and they are going to try to laterally move through any and all of what they can access. Then what are they going to do? Well, it depends on what they're looking for. They're going to steal data. They're going to exfiltrate that data. Maybe they just don't like you and they're going to destroy the data. These are things that we look for from a security perspective to try and identify all of our weak points. Now, Defender for Cloud. Defender for Cloud, first of all, we have Cloud Security Posture Management. Microsoft Defender for Cloud is actually available for free to all Azure users so that we can get things like our secure score, detection of misconfigurations on our Azure machines, our asset inventory. These are things that we're going to use to strengthen the security posture of our cloud, our hybrid cloud model, and track compliance with built-in policies. But we also have cloud workload protection, where we can go on and turn on all the features of Defender for Cloud. And you can do that 30 days for free so that we can actually do deeper, more advanced intelligence protection across your Azure and hybrid workloads. So enabling all of it brings additional policies. It enables Defender for Cloud Plan, and it adds custom policies and initiatives that we can look at. Now, this is a pretty busy big picture diagram. You can see that Defender for Cloud actually integrates and sees a lot of different things. It can send logs to Sentinel. It can do all sorts of different things. But we're focusing on this highlighted red area. We're looking at things like firewall, SQL, looking at our endpoints, looking at our on-prem. These are the things that Defender for Cloud is going to focus on. So Defender for Cloud is pretty much a huge dashboard. Think of it as a single pane of glass. We all hear that, single pane of glass. Yeah, everybody's got a single pane of glass. But it truly is, Defender for Cloud is truly a tool that gives you security posture and threat management in a single dashboard. It allows you to strengthen your security posture because I can see everything and I can drill down. But not only is it giving me what my Azure cloud is, what if I have hybrid? What if I have other cloud platforms? And we're going to talk about integrating those so that you can see everything. It's a tool that's going to allow us to harden our resources, track our security posture, streamline that security management. Defender for Cloud fills 3 vital needs in your security resources workload protection. It continually assesses the environment. So if I make a change based on a recommendation, which we're going to talk about here in a little bit, that score is going to change. That recommendation, based on what I do, is going to take about 45 minutes to update. And then I'm not going to see it, or I am going to see it, depending on what I've done. We're looking at hardening our resources based on security benchmarks, based on policies, based on identified gaps in our security. We're going to defend. We're going to detect and resolve threats on our resources, our workloads, our services that we're running. So looking at a dashboard, it's a continuous assessment. Understand your security posture. You're going to get a security score. At a glance, you're going to say, okay, well, I have a 28. What's that mean? Well, the lower the score, the more risk. The higher the score, the lower the identified risk. So we're trying to get to 100%. Well, that's going to take a while. Remember what I talked about. You have a maturity model. You have to look at the dashboard. You have to take action. We're going to look at security, hardening all those resources, because you're going to get security recommendations, customized and prioritized tasks that you can actually take action. You can implement a recommendation. You can ignore that recommendation and just say, yeah, we're not going to do that. We defend, detect and resolve threats. That's a big thing. We all have threats. I can't count any environment I've ever gone into that didn't have some identified threat, save one environment, and it was a DoD top secret network that didn't talk to anything except itself. Yeah, they didn't have any, but they still ran antivirus. They still ran IDS, IPS, because they were still looking for threats that might have made it in. It's all about securing that network. It's all about looking at these threats. What's it trying to tell me? Taking those alerts, streaming them into your SIM, your security information and event management system. Looking at automating through a SOAR solution, security orchestration, automated response. Whenever we can automate, that's where we want it to be. We're looking at identifying, classifying those threats and what we do with those threats. But are all security alerts real? No. Sometimes we have to make exceptions because, hey, you know what? That's just a weird application that we have and it generates that, so we're going to ignore that. So looking at the single pane of glass, Defender for Cloud, going into the overview, and we're seeing multiple panes here. So I've got my secure score. I've got my workload protection, regulatory compliance, my firewall, an inventory of my assets and how they look. We have information protection. We also have insights over here. What are those things that I should be looking at? But it's a single pane of glass that allows me to drill in and take action. And that's a big part. Let's take action. Our security posture management with Secure Score. It gives me insight into the state of the security of my cloud workloads. It addresses vulnerabilities with prioritized recommendations. It allows me to improve my secure score and overall posture in minutes. Why? Because I can look at all of those recommendations and I can take immediate action. I can say, yep, I want to resolve that. Do whatever you need to do to resolve that for me. It speeds up my compliance, my regulatory compliance. And we're going to see when we get into compliance that there are pre-built policies that you can actually start implementing and turn on so that you can be in compliance with what your organization has to be in compliance with. There's granular control over that secure score. It's going to tell me, hey, if you do this, you're going to improve your score by 2%. Awesome. That means I'm going to be 2% better than I was 5 minutes ago. What's not to like? I mean, we're looking at giving you a prioritized list so that you can improve the security of your environment. Hey, but you know what's key here? You actually have to look at the dashboards. You have to look at this environment. You have to drill into that secure score that Defender's giving. You have to assess your resources. Well, Defender does that for you continuously. It aggregates all of those findings into a single score so that you get a glance of, hey, how am I looking today? Hey, you know what? I came in this morning, I saw that I had recommendations. My score was 32. I implemented those. Hey, look, it's now noon. My score is 38. Hey, we improved. And that's what we want. We're looking at drilling in, getting all of those things and looking at this score. Would I like to be at 100%? Yeah. Do I think that's going to be a reality when I first turn this on and start looking at it? Yeah, probably not. I'm sure I've probably misconfigured something. Someone misconfigured something. Did I think of everything? It's impossible to think of everything. I don't care how good you are at your job. We always forget we're human. But this will help me identify my humanality for the most part, right? I made a mistake. I'm going to go correct that mistake. What is my security posture? That's what it's all about. How am I doing securing those things that I need to secure? Pardon me. My apologies. But these are the things that we're looking at. And cloud, Defender for Cloud is continually assessing this. Every time there's a change to the environment, if it generates something that's not within those policies, that generates any kind of an event that can be considered outside that scope, we're going to get that information, at least within 45 minutes, right? And we can look at all of our subscriptions in a single view. We can see the scores for each of those subscriptions in a single pane of glass. And that's what we want. We want to increase that score. That is really what it's all about. You can see here in this example, we have our secure score, and we can see the controls. What are the controls that we're being judged, so to speak, against? Each control is a logical group of security recommendations, and it reflects your vulnerable attack service. We want to improve that score. We want to look at these controls. What are we lacking? Why are we not getting, the full, hey, you can score 5 of 5. Why am I not scoring 5 of 5? We drill into those. We look and see what it's telling us. In order for that score to improve, we have to mitigate, fix all of the recommendations. Otherwise, my score is not going to improve because I still have something that I didn't fix. We want to monitor compliance. Compliance is huge. For the most part, I cannot think of any environment that I've ever been in that didn't have some compliance that they are under. Whether it is your organizational security policy, hey, here's my policy for password management. Here's my policy for electronic communication. Here's my policy that says you consent to be monitored anytime you log on. That's my organizational policy. It's all around security and acceptable use and all of that. These are things that we want to monitor. If I take credit cards, I'm under PCI. Okay, so how do I stack up against PCI? Those security regulations are laid out. And if I don't meet that and I fail too many audits from an auditor, guess what? I'm not taking credit cards anymore. And for many businesses, that would be a huge impact. Imagine you're a hospital. How many people pay their bill with a credit card? So these are things that we have to continuously assess. We have to continuously make sure that we meet those compliance obligations. And we want to do it across every cloud environment. So we can actually monitor Azure, AWS, GCP, on-prem. How are we stacked up? We're going to get a benchmark. We're going to see our score fully aligned to our compliance obligations. By default, it's always monitored. Microsoft turns on that Microsoft Security Benchmark by default. So we start with Microsoft Benchmark. Maybe we add another one after we look and say, hey, yeah, I think we're pretty good here. Let's move on to PCI. It supports the common industry standards. It's an overview. But we want to look at all of those obligations that we are under. We can onboard all of those. We can download these executive PDF or a detailed CSV report. How are we stacking up? As an analyst, I'm a big believer in CSV because I do a lot of work with CSV. But I can drill into these. I can see under my identity access management, I can see, hey, look, you know what? I'm not compliant here. Why? I get that drill down capability so that I can get one-on-one, so to speak, with that policy. What is it I need to change to bring my environment into compliance? These are things that we look at. Again, Defender for Cloud has all sorts of pre-built benchmarks, standards, regulatory, industry. It's all about securing the environment. By default, every subscription has the Azure Security benchmark assigned to it. This is Microsoft's authored Azure-specific guidelines for security and compliance, including best practices based on the compliance frameworks. We see we have NIST, SWIFT, Canada's, Azure CIS. Anytime there's a new available benchmark, that standard's going to be added, but you have to go turn it on. Again, just because Azure Security Benchmark is turned on, does that mean I'm done? No. What other things are you under? If you're under PCI, go turn PCI. If you're under NIST standards, turn NIST standards on. Make sure that you look at those compliance policies and turn them on. Do I have to do them all at once? Yeah, well, that's a lot of work. Is this your only job? If it's your only job, maybe you should turn them all out at once. I wouldn't recommend it. I like to work my way through one at a time. Secure what I can, because there's going to be overlap between these policies. So securing one might take care of two. Again, you need to understand your environment. You need to understand the regulations, the compliance standards that you are under. But we all know we have to be compliant. If we fail audits, bad things happen, and we don't want that. Looking at Firewall Manager, notice there's a tile down here for Firewall Manager. This tile is going to show you the status of your hubs. So if we look deeper dive into this, you can see the Azure Firewall Manager is a security management service that provides central security policy and route management for your cloud-based perimeters. The firewall management, security management, helps you with two specific types of network architecture. First, you have your secured virtual hub. That's an Azure Virtual WAN Hub. And it's Microsoft managed resource, excuse me, that lets you easily create your hub and spoke architecture for your cloud environment, securing that routing with policies that are associated with that hub. You also have your hub virtual network. This is your standard Azure virtual network you create and manage yourself. When security policies are associated to that hub, it's referred to as a hub virtual network. But at this time, only Azure Firewall policy is supported. But again, you can look at your hub and spoke. How are you stacked up? Where are you deployed? What are the things you're missing? I can see that posture. And you can manage firewalls in standalone virtual networks that aren't peered together to any spoke. These are the things that are going to get us into that deep dive that we're looking at. Looking at my inventory. So I have an inventory dashboard. So in a single view, I can see all my monitored resources. I can easily filter that, sort it, cross-referencing that experience. It is resource-centric, and that's important. I can filter by all the resources, the tags, the resource groups. I can filter by security posture. So I can look and it'll tell me based on recommendations, specific vulnerabilities. I can filter by status, coverage, the pricing, the agent status. I can explore and export all of this. So, hey, you know what? I don't want to do it all in here. I've got some cool, tools that I use in Excel or whatever it is. I can export it to CSV and I can manually manipulate it. I can look at my resource graph. I can build reports, workbooks. I can assign tags to these resources so that I can track everything the way I should be tracking it, or the way that we've all agreed as a team that we're supposed to be tracking. We work together. Nothing happens in a vacuum. We have to communicate. For the most part, we're working with other people, developers, sysadmins. We want to clearly communicate what we want to do with these resources. It's my entire resource estate. Defender for Cloud, again, periodically analyzes the security state of your resources to identify potential security vulnerabilities, threats, misconfigurations. It then gives you recommendations on how you can remediate those vulnerabilities. When any resource has an outstanding recommendation, they'll appear in that inventory. So I see some of the top things in my inventory view. What are the total number of resources connected to cloud, Defender for Cloud? Unhealthy resources. Resources with active security recommendations. Unmonitored resources. Resources with agent monitoring issues. They have the log analytics agent deployed, but the agent isn't sending any data. That's a health issue. We need to correct that issue. Maybe it's a firewall issue. Maybe something's getting blocked. Unregistered subscriptions. Any subscription in the selected scope that haven't yet been connected to Azure Defender or Microsoft Defender for Cloud. So looking at my inventory, so you can see across the top, I can see I can add non-Azure servers, I can query, I can actually come down and filter by all these different parameters of what I want to see. You can see the total number of resources. 318 of those 1,904 are unhealthy. Currently, I have 0 unmonitored, and I have 0 unregistered subscriptions. So we're looking at the health of my subscriptions. What are we looking at? We can drill into these, look at the state of all of those resources. You can also select individuals or groups based on tags, logic apps, all of these things that we can manage, again, in a nice single pane of glass, looking at the inventory, looking at the digital estate of my environment. These are things that are going to make it easier for me to bring my environment into compliance, to correct issues, to fix broken, unhealthy resources. So you can see in here, you can filter which subscription you want to use, which tags we want to filter by. Again, a nice little automation of looking at how do I get down that proverbial rabbit hole. What am I specifically looking for? Again, hey, you know what? Bob called me up. Bob said, hey, I need to look at this machine. It doesn't seem like it's healthy. I can filter by resource group, vulnerability, CVE, all of that, and drill into that one resource Bob told me that I needed to look at, or a group of resources that I needed to look at. It's an effective way of managing that environment, looking at the security of that environment. We have information protection. We can utilize Azure Purview. Again, it's an add-on module, but we can use Azure Purview and look for things that contain sensitive information, outstanding recommendations, and alert. It's a unified data governance service that helps you manage and govern your on-premises, multi-cloud, and software as a service data. It's easy in this instance to create a holistic, up-to-date map of your data landscape, and it's automated data discovery, sensitive data classification. It's end-to-end data lineage. Excuse me. With Purview Data Insights, again, you can see things that your security officers can get a bird's eye view at a glance of the state of the governance of the environment. I can drill into those to see what's going on. So with this dashboard, this information protection dashboard, if I'm using Purview, I can see, hey, look, you know, somebody sent credit card numbers, social security numbers. But in addition to that, if you're using Defender, excuse me, for endpoint, you're going to also see what endpoint is seeing. You're going to see both that information protection, and you're going to see what Defender for endpoint has marked. So you can see all of the different threats and manage those threats in your infrastructure. When we look at Defender for Cloud, again, we were talking about all the things it recommends. It shows you all of the things that you need to fix, but it's going to recommend what things you need to fix. It's going to give you an explanation of what that is. Anything that Defender for Cloud designates as needing fixed, it's going to stick a lightning bolt next to that. From the Unhealthy Resources tab, you're going to select the resources you want to implement a recommendation, and then you will select Remediate. You'll confirm it. You'll see the details. You'll insert relevant parameters if it's necessary and approve that remediation. Once it's completed, a notification appears informing you that it's actually succeeded. Now, you can see here in this dashboard, I have several lightning bolts, things that need remediation. And I can launch that remediation. I don't have to do them one at a time. I can click my action button. I could select all of them, and I could remediate all of them at one shot. So it says here, here's my remediation. Here are the things that I want to fix. I examine, yep, those are the ones I want, and I click remediate. It's going to launch that. It's going to take the configured action. And then my secure score within 45 minutes is going to go up. And that's what we want. We want our secure score to go up. Looking at multi-cloud in Defender for Cloud. So we look at things like Azure Arc. Azure services and management capabilities on any infrastructure, anywhere. So we have Arc for servers, where we can organize and govern across multiple environments. Google Cloud, AWS, on-prem. I can use Azure Arc for Kubernetes so that I can deploy and configure Kubernetes applications consistently across all my environments with that modern DevOps technique. Azure Data Services on Azure Arc. Run data services anywhere. So I can deploy my Azure Data Services in seconds, anywhere I need them. Simpler compliance, faster response times, better security, right? I know this app is secure. I designed it in a secure environment. I went through my whole secure score. I know everything's good with this service. So why would I want to reinvent the wheel across multiple environments? I know this service works. I know it's secure. Deploy it instantly in a different environment. It's hybrid, multi-cloud and hybrid. So wherever my resources are, wherever my servers, whatever it might be, wherever they exist, I can use Azure Arc. Faster compliance, increase my secure score. Why is it going to increase my secure score? Because I'm not going to have a vulnerability because I corrected those already, right? That's the point. I have my Azure cloud. I go through Defender for Cloud. I look at all that regulatory compliance, asset management, my secure scores, my threats, SIM, all of that. My server protection, I have Qualys Scanner built in. Now I'm going to extend everything that I have secured to all my other places. I have an AWS cloud. I have a Google cloud. Oh, wait, I have my on-prem stuff. I don't really like Active Directory password security. So I'm going to extend Azure password security down to Active Directory. I know what my policies are in the cloud. Now I'm going to work with the person who manages that Active Directory server, and we're going to work together. Because remember, nothing happens in a vacuum. It's all about securing the environment, but it's about consistency as well. That's what we're going to be looking at here. We want a consistent experience for our user base across the whole environment. Looking at our subscriptions, our multi-cloud information. At the top of this dashboard, you can see all the active subscriptions. You can see all, excuse me, including all of the recommendations from not just our Azure, but our multi-cloud environment, our AWS, our Google. Insights, this little box right here. This Insights offers, whoops, that Insights box, what happened? That Insights box actually offers me prioritized, customized recommendations for my environment. What are the most attacked resources? My controls that have the highest potential increase in security score. They're active recommendations and should be looked at. How do I increase my score? Remember, this is all about increasing my security and understanding that secure score. How do I get compliant? How do I secure this architecture that I have spent so long building? You'll notice that it's also integrated threat protection. Your environment, we can integrate with Microsoft Sentinel, Microsoft's SIEM, Security Information and Event Management System. All Microsoft products, basically with the flip of a switch, can send their logs to Sentinel. Again, names change. It used to be Azure Sentinel. It used to be this. It used to be that. It doesn't matter. What if you're not using Sentinel? It'll still integrate with third party. Again, all of this information, we were talking about Defender for Cloud as a single pane of glass, but so is Sentinel. Because now I can take everything that I am seeing in all my Defender products. Yes, this is my extended detection and response down here. But I can send all of those logs into Sentinel. Okay, great, Mark. I got a log server. Awesome, thanks. That's not it. Because now I can write queries and look across multiple threat vectors with KQL, Custo Query Language. I can join tables together. And now I can say, hey, I want to know if you saw this, followed by this, followed by this in these three different tables. If you see this, I know for a fact it's XYZ exploit, or it's lateral movement, or it's whatever. And I want you to generate an alert. I want you to send an email, and I want you to take automated action, because I know 100% that that's not a false positive. A hash. I could look for a specific hash of a specific piece of malware. If it's a SHA-256 hash, there's zero chance that it's a false positive. Why? Because hashes change as you update a product. And there has never been a collision of hashes in SHA-256. These are things you need to think about. These are things I want you to think about. Because now I'm able to analyze all of these logs in a single pane of glass. And that's important for the security of my infrastructure. Again, comprehensive threat protection. Threat protection for Azure and hybrid workloads. Any server, any VM, Azure SQL, Postgres, MySQL. I can see it across all layers with my multi-cloud, with Arc. It's all about defending the whole environment, not just bits and pieces. Workload protection. Again, we want to look at protecting the environment. Again, remember, Defender for Cloud Basic is free. That's my cloud workload protection. I'll get my secure scores. I'll get recommendations. It's intelligent protection for Azure, for on-prem. But if I want to extend more than just the free, I have to turn those services on and get full-blown Defender for Cloud so that I can protect everything in my environment. I can see all of those devices. We're looking at building that protection. We're looking at deploying that protection, getting that secure score as high as possible. What are the gaps? What do we need to remediate? That workload protection, it's a summary of that whole hybrid cloud. It's prioritized security alerts. It's insights into the threats that we're currently seeing in our environment. What are those threats? What are those systems that I need to address? What do I need to address first and foremost? Again, we were talking about what in the very beginning? Oh yeah, that zero trust model. So if I've decided that my focus is going to be identity, what's the first thing I'm looking for in any of these dashboards? Anything that relates to identity. Do people have access? Do everybody have access? Well, no, I want to lock that down. I don't want you to be able to deploy a resource just because you want to. You have to be a certain something, administrator, whatever that might be. It's all about locking that environment to what fits your business model and what fits that zero trust model. These are things that we look at in our environment. Defender for servers. Deploying Defender for servers adds a huge benefit because Defender for servers is going to contain that Qualys scanner. Vulnerability scanners are important, but also Defender for server is going to reduce the open ports. We're going to look at things like just in time to access a port. What does that mean? Okay, so I need to RDP to a specific box. I'm going to turn on RDP for my partner in crime, Tom, but only for a certain amount of time. So he's going to be able to RDP to that box, and then it's going to get turned off because he needs to do something. We're going to block malware with adaptive application controls. Again, we're looking at that whole management aspect of our servers. These servers contain valuable resources. They're critical business infrastructure. We have that whole just-in-time registration, so you're only going to get a port for a limited amount of time. These are things that we start looking at. Adaptive network hardening. Protect your servers. Defender for endpoint. So it's going to protect Microsoft and Linux boxes. We're looking at hardening the network layer as well as the device, and we're doing it across, multiple clouds. Again, these are things that we're looking at. It doesn't have to be a Microsoft. We can do Linux. We're looking at securing, protecting with Defender Advanced Threat Protection, Microsoft Defender for Cloud. Again, Defender is a leading EDR solution. You know, I know a lot of people out there think, well, it's Microsoft. That's not true. Again, remember, they're a security vendor. Billions of dollars in security that they have revenue. So what does that mean? That means they invest billions of dollars into security. Just because they make money doesn't mean they don't invest that money. It's always getting better. Turn on that vulnerability assessment. I can tell you I'm a big believer in vulnerability assessment tools. I've used Qualys. I've used Nessus. Hey, I started using Nessus when Renaud Desarian had a day job. And it was, freeware. Scanners are valuable tools. They identify potential threat vectors, open ports, things that are talking that shouldn't be talking. It's how I can lock my box down. What API is open? All of those things. This scanner is a valuable tool. It's going to scan these end hosts, or these servers, excuse me. And it's built into Defender for Servers. These are tools that anyone and everyone should want in their environment. I'm a big believer in trusted and untrusted scanners. Hey, you know what? Throw a scanner box out there. Trusted scanners are basically allowed through all of everything. Untrusted scanners test the millions of dollars worth of products that you put into your environment to make sure they work. But you don't get many opportunities to have a product that has a built-in scanner to say, hey, Mark, over here, dude, you forgot to do this. I don't have to run another scanner. And that's huge. That's a big benefit, in my opinion. Defender for SQL. Protect your SQL servers anywhere, Azure, on-prem, other clouds. Look for all those advanced threats, SQL injection, all of those things that could possibly exploit your SQL server. Okay, Mark, why is that so important? Well, I don't know. Where do you store your PII data? Where do you store your credit card data? Where do you store on and on and on all your confidential data? It's usually in a database. Again, Defender for SQL. Defender for storage provides contextual alerts on unusual and potentially harmful breaches against your storage accounts. Hey, I got all sorts of data that I'm storing in these storage accounts, probably sensitive data as well. It's going to give you relevant recommendations on how to harden your storage accounts, how to harden these storage containers, file shares, data lakes in Azure, blob containers, does it all. Containers. Qualys is built into this. It's going to scan your Docker images for libraries that might contain vulnerabilities. And the cool thing is, if you're an IDS, IPS threat guy like me, most of these types of scanners, until very recently, did static analysis. Oh, I don't see anything. Move on. Not this one. It does dynamic analysis. It's going to look at it as a complete entity. It's going to scan that. It's going to look and see if that code actually executes something bad. And that's a huge value add. Static analysis generates a lot of false positives. Oh, hey, I saw something that didn't look correct. Generally, dynamic analysis doesn't generate as many false positives because it's analyzing it as a whole. And it's saying, yeah, that's really not an exploit. Think of it this way. Hey, you wrote code that wasn't written in a secure design way. And that's kind of what it comes down to. It's going to evaluate all of that and alleviate some of those false positives. Defender for Kubernetes. Again, Kubernetes has actually become very quickly the new standard for deploying and managing software. And there aren't many people that have extensive knowledge of Kubernetes. I actually, probably about a year ago, saw a job posting. They were looking for Kubernetes and they were looking for all of this experience. And I don't remember the years, but the years of experience that they wanted for Kubernetes was like 3 years more than Kubernetes even existed. So yeah, good luck with that. But it is becoming a standard. And it's also becoming an attack vector. People want to get into these clusters. They want to get into these libraries, and they want to look and put their threats inside there. They want to exploit these. So Defender for Kubernetes is going to look for those threats. It's going to look to see if there is an attack surface, an open door that an attacker can get in. Controlling all of that is important, and it's huge because, like I said, this is quickly becoming the new standard for how people are going to use. Now, looking at the attack matrix for Kubernetes, you can see initial access. So what are they looking at? Cloud credentials, compromised images in the registry, the config file, application vulnerability. Again, the matrix is a little different because it's a container. I need to figure out, as a bad guy, how to break into that container. How do I exploit it? What's the architecture? How do I escalate my privileges? How do I evade the threat stuff that you as a cool, awesome administrator have put in place? That's what they're going to be looking at. Credentials. Getting your credentials, discovering all of these things. And then finally, lateral movement. And then how do I impact you? What am I trying to get out of this environment. The breadth of protection that you get with Defender for Cloud is huge. Any workload in Azure. With Arc, any workload anywhere. Resource Manager. So I have Defender for Resource Manager, so I can monitor all those resources, all those operations. Defender for DNS. DNS, hey, everybody knows DNS black hole, right? Come on. Can't be anybody out there that's not heard of a DNS black hole attack. We want to monitor this. We want to make sure that our users aren't getting redirected. We want those alerts. Key Vault. Defender for Key Vault. If I have the key, I can open any door. If I can get into your Key Vault, I own you. I don't care. I own you, because if I have the keys, I have the keys to the kingdom. And again, that's something we dearly want to protect. A Defender for Cloud will do that for you. Microsoft Defender for the Internet of Things. It now incorporates agentless technology because they bought a company called CyberX, which now secures brownfield as well as greenfield devices. Okay, so what's a brownfield? What's a greenfield? Brownfield has structure. It has specific code. It is something you have to write and protect in a certain way. Greenfield? Greenfield is, think about it as free form. You can do anything you want. You're starting with a clean slate, a blank page, and create all of that Internet of Thing technology. But we're going to get asset inventory, vulnerability management, so that we can see the device CPEs, open ports, all of that. Threat detection. It's going to leverage machine learning, AI technology, Sentinel integration. Again, my single pane of glass as an analyst for searching that data, doing those cool use cases of the things I want to see. Okay, so you notice here, yes, everybody, I did notice. It says Azure Security Center. It's a Forrester study that Microsoft commissioned on Azure Security Center, not Microsoft Defender for Cloud, but they're essentially the same thing. But this data is very, very relevant. Now, in the chat session, I have asked one of our people to post this full report, which will also later be sent to you in a follow-up email. But this report was commissioned by Microsoft, and it's about the benefit of Security Center, Defender for Cloud. It's pretty much the same thing, but it's a very valuable study. Now, you can see here by turning it on, my cost over 3 years was $1.1 million. My benefit was $3.6 million. My NPV, not net present value. See, I'm not an accountant. You know, payback was over 6 months. My return on investment, that's what I'm interested in. 219% return on investment. The rest of this, I'm not an accountant. To me, those are all accounting terms. But what I am interested in, and what I think is extremely relevant to everyone, the cost saving benefit, 25% reduction in security breaches. That's kind of like when I used to deploy endpoint for a different company who will remain nameless. I said, hey, If I could show you a way to protect your end host by 50% without ever turning on the firewall, would you be interested? What do you think they said? They all said, yeah, absolutely. That's a huge benefit to me. 25% reduction in breaches, 50% reduction in time to threat mitigation. Remember I said it takes months. Yeah. Well, 50%, I'm all over that as a security guy. 30% reduction in security policy compliance management time. I'm all over that. Yeah, I can get there like that. And $216,000 reduction in total tool spend. Anybody who has done defense in depth on an on-prem knows these numbers can be huge when you use the old defense in depth technology. So with that, I hope you enjoyed today's presentation. I hope you all learned something. Look forward to talking to you all in the future. And I will turn it over to my boss, Stan.
Thanks, Mark. So that was awesome. I think that was a great overview of all the capabilities, and I like how you tied it back to the Zero Trust framework, because that's really kind of the centerpiece in which we need to start that security journey, right? So it was great stuff. So you've seen a lot today in today's webinar, and you may be thinking, well, where do I go next? I did want to let you know that we actually have a security assessment. It's a pretty short engagement where we kind of come in, we go through some workshops where we kind of take what Mark's presented today and double click on some of those topics and kind of go through an educational workshop series with you. So we'll, go through some scope and objectives, some things that keep you up at night. We'll also talk about cloud adoption framework. Maybe there's some areas, how you do backups and how you do DR, hub spoke, network topology, all those different things will be covered in that. Of course, the Zero Trust framework, a deeper dive in that. And then we'll go over the Microsoft Defender for cloud. And then we'll actually roll up our sleeves and go through some of these assessments. And the outcome of that will be some risks that we identify and steps to remediate that. And so finally here, number 3, we'll review some of those key areas. We'll kind of project some of the cost and some of the financial aspects of it, whether it's recurring as well as any kind of services you would pay Tallan to do some of those deeper remediations, and go from there. So if you're interested in that, let me know. We'll have my contact information here. You also have some, I think, some contact information as part of this webinar. But thanks again for joining. We really appreciate you taking your time out of your busy day, and I want to thank everybody. So have a great Wednesday.
Thank you.
Thank you again.